What's up? What's going on, everybody? And in this video, I'm going to break down how you can make your own program. Now, previously, I did a video on how you can make your own program, but now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the movements and show you different and various options on creating your actual program. So whether you have access to equipment or whether you don't have access to equipment, this video is going to be perfect for you. So one of the first things, or really there's 7 things that really go on in a program design, right? Because you're looking for 7 main movements, right? We want to focus on push, pull, lunge, hinge, gait, twisting patterns, and I always name them and I forget one, right? So we did twist, push, and then pull, right? So that's the last one. So what we want to do here is first demonstrate push, right? So a push pattern is literally you just pushing, right? So some examples of push patterns are push-ups. Now, there are so many different variations of push-ups, and I'm going to give you them right now, right? So you can just go ahead and do a regular push-up on the floor just like this. If you can't do that one, you can drop the knees down if this is also difficult for you, or you want to just have another variation. You can get like a bench, a box, a stool, something like that, and then you can do the same thing on here, right? These are all push variations. These are all things that you can do with no equipment. Now that's just pushing horizontally, right? You can push vertically as well, right? So pushing vertically would be something like, if you don't have any equipment, you could elevate your feet just like this, and now you can get some more shoulder work as you're coming up and down this way, right? You can easily do that one. Other push patterns that you could do is you could do a bench press, right? So you could use a bar, you could use dumbbells like I'm about to show here, right? Now, when you do a push pattern, and this is one thing to pay attention to, and you can do this in your push-ups or in the bench, which I'm about to show you, but hand position matters. If you have your arms all the way out here, right, so this would be at 90 degrees, you're actually gonna be putting a lot of pressure on the shoulders, and this probably isn't gonna be great for you. So if you're doing your push-ups out here, that's probably not gonna be great for your shoulders, and or if you're doing any sort of bench press or any pressing motions with your arms all the way out here, doing this motion, that's probably gonna put a lot of pressure on your shoulders. We don't want that, right? So what you want to do is take it from 90 degrees and drop it down to 45 degrees. This will get recruitment of the pecs as well as the shoulders, right? So this will be the safest position where you can actually get the most reps. The next position is going to be elbows in close. This is going to work your shoulders a little bit, but it's actually going to work a little bit more triceps. So that's going to be the back of your arms, right? So again, if you're doing pushing motions and you're all the way out here doing the pushing here, and obviously you're going to be pushing really like this, right? But if you're all the way out here, this is going to put a lot of pressure on the shoulder, but you bring those elbows in a little bit closer at a 45-degree angle and push from there, right? It's a little bit safer for you. And then if you want to emphasize the triceps and still getting those push motions, you put the hands together and push from here. The same concept for a push-up, you would just be doing tricep push-ups where your elbows are in close and you're pushing just like this, and you can do any of those variations that I showed you, whether you're on the floor or you're using some kind of bench or a chair, right? So you can elevate it and elevate your legs or keep them on the ground, and you play around with how you want to do that. You can use it for variety, or you can play around with it and you see which versions are harder and easier for you, and you can program that in for yourself. Really, if you're looking for any sort of measure as to whether you're getting better or not, right? You really want to focus on intensity, right? So if you can do push-ups on your boom. Okay, so we were able to we're able to get the horizontal pushing. Now, what you can also do is vertical pushing with dumbbells, right? So I demonstrated before where you can do it with your palms on the ground, right? But you can also, again, press from here. Now, if you're all the way out here, this is gonna put more strain on your shoulder. This is not necessarily wrong, but if you want the safest position for your shoulders, you're probably gonna wanna keep those elbows in and coming up to the top. Now, you see that I'm using dumbbells here, but you don't have to only use dumbbells, right? You don't only have to use dumbbells. For example, here I have a band. If you have access to bands, you can also do the same motions, right? So I'm here, I put 1 foot in or 2 feet in. 2 feet in is gonna give you more resistance. 1 foot in is gonna give you less resistance, right? So you're here, and then you can just still do a vertical press while you're keeping those elbows in close, or you're keeping those elbows out wide. For the pressing motion, either one is fine. But if you do have any sort of shoulder issues or anything like that, elbows in would probably be the safest bet, right? So that covers the pushing, right? And that's it for that. Now, with pulling, it's a little bit more difficult for you to do pulling motions without any equipment. So you can easily use a rope, you can easily use a band just like this, right? So I would put both my feet in here, right? And I'm rowing here, so I'm pulling up here, so I'm getting those back muscles activated. You can also, if you have anywhere to hook the band onto, I have a squat rack right here, right? You can also, again, pull this way. So nice and simple, you can pull this way. So that's also an example of a pulling motion, right? You can also get an overhead pull, which would be like a pull-up, right? So if you have any sort of bar where you can do a pull-up, you can also do pull-ups this way or chin-ups with your palms facing you. Whichever one is perfectly fine. I'm not going to get into the nuance on those ones in this video, but that's something that you can easily do. If you have no access to equipment, what you can easily do is just fill up a book bag or something like that. This is something I've done many times. When I didn't have any equipment, I would fill up a book bag with something. I have a sandbag somewhere over here. Yeah. There we go. Right? So I have a sandbag right here. This is kind of like a duffel bag, right? Like a duffel bag style, but you could fill the duffel bag up with something, right? And then you could row to here. You could even get one side and row there, right? The main thing, especially when you're doing a bent over row, is to make sure that your back is nice and flat. So maybe you want to do this while you're recording yourself so you can see your back. Or maybe you can do it in front of a mirror if you have access to that, but you really want to make sure that your back is relatively flat when you're doing this, because if your back is arched like this, you'll be putting pressure on your neck and your back when you're actually trying to strengthen those and not just, compress them too much. So you can go ahead and do this position right here. I have 1 foot in front of the other, right? The leg that's back, that's the side that I'm going to row with, right? So I'm here just like this, and I'm rowing up. And then back down, nice and simple. You can go single side, or you could do the same thing here. Notice my butt is way back, and I'm rowing here, nice and simple. If you were doing this with absolutely no equipment at all, right, what you could do is come down to the ground, and arms are out straight, and you're coming up just like this, and you're rowing in just like this. And bringing those elbows down towards your side, nice and simple, and just like that, all right? You can also add the band in as well, and you can get creative with that, but I don't wanna make this video super, super long, but those are options of push and pull, right? Now, the next one is squat. Now, with the squat, there's one main thing that you want to focus on in a squat. And that is going to be, or actually two main things. You're focusing on, number one, what your heels are doing. If your heels are coming off the ground, right? If your heels are coming off the ground, this is going to put more pressure on the quads. It's not necessarily wrong, but you know that you're going to be putting more pressure in the quads. Now, if you have any sort of knee issues or ankle injuries or something like that, right? Then if your heels are off the ground while you're trying to squat down, you're going to be putting more pressure on the quads, and this is going to be more difficult on the quads. That's really it. It's not necessarily wrong, but that's what's going to happen there. Now, if you want a more even squat, right? So you want to develop quads, glutes, hamstrings. You want to make sure that the foot is nice and flat on the ground, right? You have a stance that's comfortable for you. The stance all depends on your hip structure. So some people are going to say your feet need to point straight, your feet need to point this way, that way. Figure out what feels comfortable for you and start doing that kind of squat. For me, my feet are pointed slightly outside and my squat is definitely wider than hip width apart. On this one, it's not necessary that you get all the way down to the ground. So if you come all the way down here and come up, that's great, that's fantastic. I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. I do squats like that all the time. It's one version of a squat. Another version of a squat is just coming down to right around 90 degrees. So 90 degrees is basically going to be me sinking my hips down to where my hips are in line with my knees, just like this, and back up to the top. That's nice and simple. Another variation of it is just to work the top portion. This is going to kind of give you just a little different perspective on the squat. You'll actually be able to burn the muscles out a little bit more, right? So you're here, just like this, and this is a quarter squat. There's nothing wrong with either one. Just test it out and see for yourself. The one that's going to give you the most bang for your buck is probably going to be the one that you come all the way down and all the way up. But again, you want to make sure that you're paying attention to form, right? So when you're doing a squat, the most important thing about form here is making sure that your shin angle and your torso angle are the same. So if you notice, as I'm coming down here, as my knees go forward, my torso angle matches it. So at the bottom, you should be able to draw a parallel line so that things are even. If not, you're going to start to feel aches and pains in certain places, and that's not what we want. We want to actually strengthen you and not break you down because you're getting injured, right? So I'm coming down here, just like this. Shin angle and torso angle are relatively the same. And then I'm coming back up to the top. If you have a difficulty doing that, then you can easily grab a chair, a box, a bench, a stool, whatever it is, right? And you can squat from there. You can come up and down from here. What you could do from here is also vary the squat up, right? So what you could do is explode to the top and come down slow, right? Or you could switch it up, right? You could do vice versa. You could come up slow and then control down. Come up slow and then control down, right? It doesn't really matter. You're just looking for variation, especially if you're going to be doing this stuff, right? You want to keep some variation in there because the last thing you want to do is be doing all this exercise stuff and you be bored, because once you start getting bored, you then just don't really want to do it and actually stop doing it, right? So that's just a variation there, right? And that's pretty much it. That's pretty much it for squats. If you want to add weights to your squat, right? All you have to do, there's a couple different ways you could do it, right? Or a couple different positions you can hold the stuff in. If you have dumbbells, you can use dumbbells, but literally, again, you could use like a duffel bag or something, right? You could use really anything that has weight, right? Sometimes I use my child, right? So you could hold down here, right? So you're squatting down here and then back up, nice and simple. Nothing really to it, right? You can hold there. There's also a variation where you can hold up here, right? Nice and simple. Also, if I'm using a different kind of object, You can hold on one shoulder. This will force you to use your abs a little bit more, right? Or you could do like I did with the dumbbells, but just hold on one side. It'll force you to use your abs a little bit more to stabilize, right? So from here, just like this, or you can just hold in the front with like a bear hug kind of deal here, right? Nice and simple. Just a couple different variations on the squat. So right now, we went over push, pull, squat. Now the next one is hinge. So a hinge motion is this motion where your hips are going back and forward. This is known really as a deadlift, right? Now, when you do this motion, again, you could do it with equipment, you could do it without equipment. If you're doing it without equipment, what I would suggest is that you focus on doing this motion with one leg, because you'll actually be able to feel it more. If you do it with both feet on the ground, it's a little easy, but you can do it just to get the motion, right? Because the whole point in this is that you learn how to hinge. So when you actually can hinge, you can get length in your hamstrings, but then you can also get strength in your hamstrings and glutes. So when I stick my hips back, just like so, right? What I'm doing here, once I get to like around this point, I start to feel a big stretch in my hamstrings. And then as I'm coming up, right? As I'm coming up, I'm getting a contraction in my hamstrings, but also in the glutes. The main thing to worry about when you're doing a hip hinge is that top portion, because especially when you start to get a weight in your hand, right? You start to get a weight in your hand, what people tend to do is come up and overarch like this. This is gonna start to put a lot of pressure on your low back area. We don't want that, right? So if anything, you stop just shy of locking out at the top, because we don't want this motion right here, because that is going to lead to aches and pains, right? So what we want to do is here, and then come up and stop just shy of the top, just shy of the top. Now, it's not necessary that you come all the way down here, right? Because as you can see, form is going to start to deteriorate, right? But what we want to do is really just focus on that middle to upper part. So if anything, you come to like here, and then up to the top. Here, up to the top. Now, I was mentioning the single leg. Now, what you can do with the single leg is two things. One is to split the stance, just like this. So I have one foot in front of the other. I can use a weight just like this, right? And I'm sticking the hips back, and then up to the top, stick the hips back, up to the top. Nice and simple, right? Stick it back, up to the top, just like that. Or I can get rid of the weight. What I like to do sometimes is prop my back foot up on the bench, and I'll show you here. Right, so you could use a bench, you could use a chair, whatever you have available, right? Just like this. And from here, what I'm doing is I'm sticking my hip back, and then up to the top, hips back, up to the top. If you have no equipment, that's a perfect option for you to do, because you'll actually be able to feel it in the hamstrings and the glutes, right? So very, very good option there if you have no equipment. And again, if you do have equipment, you can go ahead and load this, right, with anything. You could use a barbell, you could use any of the things that you could imagine, right? Another version of a hinge motion is a kettlebell swing. Now, I'm gonna show you what a kettlebell swing is, but what I want you to do if you've never done kettlebell swings before is to either reach out to me and I could give you some videos or something on kettlebell swings, or you look up kettlebell swings and actually do them correctly, because with the kettlebell swing, this is the quickest way you can hurt yourself if you don't know how to actually do a kettlebell swing. It's a very effective exercise, but only if you know what you're doing. If you don't know what you're doing, it's the quickest way to actually injure your low back, right? So when you're doing a kettlebell swing, again, it's that hinging motion, but it's just explosive, right? So when I'm doing a kettlebell swing, I'm starting the kettlebell here, I'm here. Hinge motion. Notice I am not squatting. I am just doing a hinge, just like I showed you before. A hinge motion, just like that. All right? That's an explosive version of a hinge. Also, a deadlift is gonna look like just what we were doing with a single leg, right? Whether you're using a dumbbell, kettlebell, whatever it is, right? My hips are going back. If you do have trouble with this concept, what I like to do is use the wall for feedback, right? So you start like right up close to the wall, and let me get in here. You start close to the wall, right? So you start maybe 6 inches from the wall, and then from here, you stick your butt back until it touches the wall, and then come up. Butt back, and then up, right? Once you can get that, then you can take a little step out. The furthest you want to get is maybe about a foot away from the wall. So you're coming back, hips touch, and up. Hips back, and up. Again, you're finding the wall with your butt. So I'm here, I'm not leaning back like this. I'm hinging like a door. And then back up to the top, making sure I'm not locking out up here, right? I'm stopping just shy so that I can keep the tension on the glutes and the hamstring. Very good way to develop those hinge patterns and to develop the glutes and hamstrings, okay? So right now we went over push, pull, squat, and then we did hinge. The next one is lunge, right? So lunging is just like this, right? Lunging is basically almost like you're taking a step, right? So there's a couple different ways to do lunges. And obviously with lunges, you can load things and not have them loaded, right? So doing a lunge with your body weight is perfect. Once you learn how to do that, then I would suggest adding weights, but your body weight is gonna be good enough for most people. So there's 2 ways to do lunges. What I would suggest if you've never done lunges before or you're questioning your form is to start with reverse lunges because they're more forgiving on your knees, right? So you're here, I'm gonna take my left foot and I'm stepping it backwards. So my left foot is coming back, and then after I step back, my weight is coming straight down, and then up, right? Again, this is just like a squat where I want the angle in my torso to match the angle in my shin. So when I'm here, if my shin is straight up and down, then I'm keeping my body straight up and down, right? There's no specific right or wrong here, right? If your knees come forward, then what that means is that your torso angle has to match the same exact thing, right? So if your knees come more forward, this is gonna put a little bit more pressure on the knees. It's not necessarily a bad thing. You actually can grow some strength there. But if you do have knees that just are not great, I would suggest keeping your torso upright, doing that reverse lunge and coming down here. You can alternate it, right? Or you could just go the same side, right? When you're doing this one, what's happening is the leg that's in front is doing most of the work, right? You're feeling that in the glutes, hamstrings, and quad, right? If you're only feeling it in the quad, this means that your weight is way too far forward and it's mostly in the front of your toes. If you want to change that weight shift, what you want to do is make sure that your weight is mostly in the heels, right? Because when your weight is mostly in the heels, you can actually get good glute and hamstring recruitment. Now, the reason why I keep stressing glute and hamstring recruitment is because most of us have this tendency to lean forward because of the shoes that we wear and because we're basically quad dominant, which basically means that the muscles that are the strongest for us are the muscles in the front of our body. Now, the biggest muscles are basically your glutes, right? And if those are in the back of your body, most people's glutes are not as turned on as they should be. So this is why I'm suggesting that you put your weight in mostly your heel so that you can get glute and hamstring recruitment as you come down and then back up to the top. Nice and simple, down, up to the top, all right? Nice and easy. That's a reverse lunge. The other version of a lunge, there's 2 more versions that I'm gonna show you here. The other versions of a lunge is forward lunge, right? So I'm starting here and I'm stepping forward, just like this, and then you can come back to here, or the next version is a walking lunge, right? So a walking lunge is literally I'm stepping forward, Just like that, nice and simple. Again, I'm trying to make sure that most of my weight is in my heel so that I can get good glute and hamstring recruitment, okay? Those are the lunge variations. Once we get to the end, I'll show you a little bit different variations so you can kind of add a couple things in at once, but that is a lunge. Now, the next one is a twisting pattern. Now, the twisting pattern is very simple, right? What you could do for this one is go ahead and really just add a twist to a lot of motions. Now, what ends up happening is a lot of people go to just a couple exercises that they know, and I'm going to show you just some simple ones because you can really get crazy here. But a simple one is a Russian twist, right? A Russian twist is very simple. You can do it with no weight or with weight. You're down on the ground. I'm here. My head is looking forward, so I'll go this way. My head is looking forward, right? And everything is on the ground. My heels are on the ground. My butt is on the ground, and I'm twisting here, twist here. Right, so as you twist, you're feeling that in the obliques. So I'm twisting here, nice and simple way to do this. Also, I'm gonna turn it to the side so you can see I want my back relatively straight. I don't want it over like this because now we're getting stronger and reinforcing bad mechanics in your body. So we wanna have the back relatively flat. You can lean back a little bit if you need to, and then we're tapping down side to side, nice and easy here, right? And that's an easy twist, right? You could also change this variation up and add a twist, but twisting your legs to where your torso stays down on the ground. From here, what I like to do, I'm here and I'm twisting just like this. I'm twisting my legs down and then up. Just a simple twisting pattern, right? This is not the only twisting exercises, but these are ones that I like to use for core, right? Nice twisting pattern. You could take that twisting pattern to here. Also, palms are down and my legs are up. From here, I'm twisting my knees toward the ground, twist my knees toward the ground. Again, I'm getting a twisting pattern again. Now, with twists, what you want to do is really start adding them into other exercises, right? So for example, right, we can add a twist to some overhead press, right? So let's just say you have your dumbbells here, right? I want to twist to an overhead press. What I'm doing here is I'm not just going to twist my shoulder because my shoulder is going to get the same activation anyway, but I'm going to twist my torso. So now I can add a squat to this or a lunge to this as well. So right here, I'm going to squat down. When I come up, I'm twisting. Squat down, up, twist, right? That's one version. You could actually do a similar version with a reverse lunge, right? So if I'm reverse lunging, I'll turn this way, right? If I'm reverse lunging, I can twist to one side, and it doesn't have to be loaded, right? I can come down, I can twist to one side, right? That's a twisting pattern, right? The reason why a twisting pattern is good is because when you walk, you don't walk stiff like a robot like this. There's actually a twist in your spine when you begin to walk, right? So that's really what we're trying to do. We're trying to incorporate a twist into different motions, and that's just two really easy ones to do. If you want to add another twisting one to your core exercise, right, you can go into a plank and twist there. So if you can't do it all the way on the ground, you can go ahead and get a box, a bench, a stool, whatever it is, right? I'm here and I'm opening up to the top with a twist and just opening up this way, right? Really, I'm making sure that my hip is moving from looking down at the ground to up to the sky, right? Nice and simple. And then you could obviously get the other side, or you could alternate from side to side, right? Nice and simple exercise there. And that would be some twisting patterns. And you can play around with the twist. There's so many other versions of a twist, right? I'm not gonna really get into everything here because this video is probably already long, right? The last one is gait, right? And I don't really need to explain this one too much, but gait is going to be your walking, your running, your jogging, right? Adding walking, running, or jogging to any of this stuff. Now, if you have some aches and pains and stiffness and things like that, I would suggest to start off with walking and start doing some of those patterns that I showed you in this video. They will help you support your walking, running, and jogging, right? Because as a human, we really want to be able to stand and walk and run with no issues. So that's the reason why we have all of these exercises, and they're really called the 7 primal movement patterns. But that's why we have those 7 primal movement patterns. Those are a whole bunch of examples that you can use. You can obviously play around with them. You can mix them together like I just did at the end here to show you how you can add twisting to all of it, right? But that is how you can set up your own program. Hopefully this video and the last video help you out. If you do have any more questions, don't hesitate to reach back out. Peace.